One of the most painful questions in love is not whether someone has feelings. It is whether their distance is coming from fear or from the simple truth that they are no longer that interested. Because those two things can look almost identical when you're inside them. Both can create hesitation. Both can create mixed signals. Both can make someone feel hard to read. Both can leave you staring at your phone, replaying the same conversations, wondering whether the bond is struggling because it matters too much to them or because it never mattered enough in the first place. That is why this question hurts so much. If it is fear, then part of you wants to be patient. You want to understand. You want to believe the feeling is still there underneath the distance. But if it is real disinterest, then every extra day you spend decoding it can keep you emotionally tied to a connection that is already slipping away. Today, I want to walk through how to tell the difference between fear and real disinterest, what people usually get wrong about both, and why the answer is rarely found in one dramatic moment. It is found in the emotional pattern over time. Stay with me until the end, because the last distinction is the one that matters most. It can save you from turning someone's confusion into hope when what you are really receiving is absence. The first thing to understand is that fear and disinterest do not feel the same underneath, even if they can look similar on the surface. Fear usually creates conflict. Disinterest usually creates drift. That difference matters. When someone is afraid, there is often tension in the connection. Energy, charge, a sense that something is happening, even if it is not being handled well. The bond may feel unstable, but it does not feel empty. There is often some push and pull, some warmth followed by retreat, some sign that the person is emotionally affected, even if they are not emotionally available. When someone is truly disinterested, the connection often feels flatter over time, less charged, less alive, less psychologically tense. The energy does not usually feel conflicted so much as reduced. They are not wrestling with closeness. They are simply not moving toward it. This is where people get confused because fear can look like distance and distance can look like rejection. But not all distance has the same emotional temperature. Fear often carries heat inside it. Disinterest often carries withdrawal without much inner struggle that you can feel. That does not mean fear is healthy. It can still hurt you deeply. But if you want to tell the difference, start by noticing whether the connection feels conflicted or simply thinning. One of the clearest signs of fear is that closeness seems to affect them. Not always in a mature way, not always in a way that feels good, but it affects them. Maybe they become warmer, then suddenly more guarded after a deep conversation. Maybe they seem emotionally stirred after a close moment, then pull back. Maybe they notice your distance. Maybe they react when the bond feels threatened. Maybe they show flashes of tenderness that feel sincere, then quickly retreat from the implications of those moments. That kind of pattern usually means the bond is landing somewhere real. The issue is not lack of feeling. The issue is that the feeling is colliding with fear, overwhelm, shame, or a nervous system that does not know how to hold closeness without trying to escape it. Real disinterest usually looks different. Closeness does not seem to change much for them. Deep conversations do not create meaningful after effects. Your absence does not seem to register in a strong way. The connection does not seem to stir them deeply enough to create noticeable inner conflict. They may still be polite. They may still respond sometimes. They may still enjoy your company when it is convenient. But the bond does not seem to move through them in a way that creates real emotional tension. That is one of the biggest clues. Fear often reacts. Disinterest often simply fades. Another difference is in curiosity. Someone who is afraid may still remain psychologically attentive to you even while acting inconsistently. They may notice things, remember details, watch your energy, react subtly when you seem distant. Their behavior may be messy, but your emotional reality still seems to land with them. Someone who is disinterested usually stops reaching and often stops noticing in any meaningful way too. This matters because curiosity is one of the quietest signs of real emotional investment. People who care tend to stay mentally engaged with your interior. They may ask directly or they may reveal it indirectly, but you can usually feel that your existence still has texture to them. When fear is the issue, curiosity often survives even when consistency does not. They may still be tuned in, even while being guarded. They may still track you, even while keeping distance. That is why the bond feels so confusing. I want to take a quick moment to thank everyone who supports Soft Mind. Every cup I share with you, like this Chloe the cat mug, reminds me of how this community grew from one quiet idea into something warm and real. Each Chloe the cat item helps me keep creating these videos, so if you'd like to support the channel, you can grab your own cozy mug at colabbmusic.com. Thank you for being part of this calm space. There is evidence of attention, but not enough relational safety to rest inside it. When it is disinterest, the attention itself usually starts thinning out. They do not ask much, do not follow it much, do not seem particularly activated by what is happening in your world. They may keep the connection going lightly, but it no longer feels like they are reaching toward who you are. And when curiosity fades consistently, that usually tells you something important. The way they handle moments of emotional truth also reveals a lot. A fearful person may have real moments of honesty, softness, longing, or vulnerability, then retreat afterward. The truth appears, but they cannot hold it steadily. They may say something meaningful, then go quiet. They may let the mask slip, then quickly put it back on. The problem is not always that they have nothing real to express. It is that once the expression becomes visible, they often panic inside the exposure. A disinterested person usually does not show the same pattern of emotional emergence and retreat. They may say kind things. They may even say affectionate things at times, but it often lacks the same depth of emotional consequence. There is less sense that something real slipped out and then frightened them. Instead, what you often feel is general inconsistency without the deeper emotional weight beneath it. This is why fear can be so hard to let go of. Because the bond gives you moments that feel undeniably real. And maybe they are. The danger is not that you imagine them. The danger is that you may keep building your hope around those moments while ignoring the larger pattern that still leaves you confused. So yes, emotional truth followed by retreat often points more toward fear than disinterest. But truth that never becomes any form of movement still leaves you in pain either way. One of the clearest signs of real disinterest is that the connection keeps asking more from you than from them. You are the one initiating, interpreting, following up, reopening, carrying the emotional weight, trying to preserve meaning, trying to create clarity, trying to keep the bond alive. And over time, the relationship starts to feel less like something mutual and more like something you are emotionally maintaining almost alone. When fear is present, there may still be imbalance, but you can often feel that the other person is at least internally affected. Their inconsistency comes with conflict. Their distance comes with some kind of charge. Their behavior may still hurt, but it does not feel completely one-directional in its emotional gravity. With real disinterest, the gravity itself weakens. They may still participate lightly. They may still respond now and then. But you increasingly feel that if you stopped carrying the connection, there would not be much left. That is a brutal realization, but it is an important one. Because fear may resist closeness, but disinterest often simply stops investing in it. And if the bond only survives through your effort, then what you may be receiving is not hidden depth. It may be a quiet version of no. Another difference is what happens over time. Fear tends to repeat in cycles. Closeness, retreat, closeness, retreat. Warmth, then distance. Honesty, then guardedness. The pattern may be painful, but it usually has an emotional shape you can recognize. It feels like someone who keeps bumping into their own defenses. Real disinterest usually moves in a clearer direction. Less effort, less curiosity, less tenderness, less emotional charge, less return. The problem is that disinterest does not always arrive dramatically. Sometimes it fades so slowly that you keep missing it. You think the person is just tired, just overwhelmed, just distracted, just not great at communicating. And maybe once or twice that is true. But over time, what tells the truth is direction. Is the bond still emotionally alive but unstable, or is it gradually being drained of significance? Fear often leaves traces of conflict behind it. Disinterest often leaves only diminishing investment. So if you want clarity, stop obsessing over one confusing day and start watching the trajectory of the whole pattern. Trajectory tells the truth more reliably than chemistry ever will. It also matters how they respond to your absence. A fearful person often reacts when they feel the bond slipping too far away, not always by reaching clearly, not always in a healthy way, but something in them often wakes up when the connection feels truly threatened. They may become more watchful, more emotionally charged, more present in subtle ways. Your distance registers. A disinterested person usually does not show much activation when you step back. They may notice, they may even respond politely, but there is less sense of emotional disturbance, less sense that the loss of access is touching something meaningful inside them. This distinction is important because people often confuse any delayed response with care. But the deeper question is not just whether they noticed. It is whether your absence seemed to matter in a way that revealed real attachment. Again, this is not about romanticizing fear. Someone noticing your absence is not the same thing as being capable of loving you well. But if you are trying to tell fear from disinterest, reactivity to loss can be a clue. Fear often tightens when connection feels endangered. Disinterest often lets it drift. So what should you trust when you are trying to tell the difference? Trust the emotional pattern more than the emotional fantasy. Do not ask only, could this person secretly care? That question can keep you trapped forever. Ask instead, what is this pattern teaching me to live inside? Is it teaching you closeness with fear around it, or is it teaching you to survive on less and less? Is the person conflicted, or are they simply not choosing you with enough force to make the bond real? Is there movement, however imperfect, toward truth? Or are you mostly living on nuance, memory, chemistry, and interpretation? Because one of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming fear is always more hopeful than disinterest. It is not. Fear may explain the inconsistency, but explanation is not the same thing as emotional safety. Someone can be afraid and still remain unavailable for a very long time. Someone can care and still not have the courage, skill, or capacity to sustain a healthy bond. So yes, telling the difference matters. But what matters even more is whether either pattern is still costing you too much peace. How do you tell if it is fear or real disinterest? Fear usually feels conflicted. There is charge. There is tension. There are signs that closeness affects them, even if they do not handle it well. The bond feels emotionally alive, but unstable. Real disinterest usually feels thinner over time. Less curiosity, less emotional gravity, less meaningful response to closeness or absence. The connection begins surviving more on your effort than on their investment. That is the difference. But here is the deeper truth. Sometimes the hardest thing is not figuring out which one it is. Sometimes the hardest thing is admitting that fear and disinterest can both leave you in the same kind of pain if neither one is turning into healthy, consistent movement toward you. So if this episode gave language to something you have been trying to understand, let me know in the comments which distinction hit the hardest. And if you want more calm, honest conversations about love, attachment, mixed signals, and emotional clarity, subscribe to Soft Mind. Some people pull away because they are afraid. Some people pull away because they are not that invested. And some of the deepest healing begins when you stop trying to beg clarity out of either one and start asking what kind of love actually lets your heart rest.